Welcome to the third of a series of three lectures presented by the George Washington Foundation and the National Park Service. Just a reminder, we have some brochures in the back if you want to see what's going on in our world of programming at Ferry Farm at Kenmore. I will introduce tonight's speaker. You're going to love him. He's very charming, smart. We're lucky to get him, and he works for the right price. And so, my name is David Muraca. I'm the Director of Archaeology at Ferry Farm and Kenmore. I've been here for about almost 20 years, and that's pretty much all you need to know about me. We're going to see some new things today that nobody's seen, and so I'm really excited to show them. Some things I have conclusions for, other things not so much. We're just going to look at them. But anyway, here we go. Tonight I will examine 18th century trash disposal practices as one way to explore the complex puzzle that is the 18th century colonial behavior. We will look at three case studies that help us understand garbage disposal practices during the period. One of the impacts of the 18th century consumer revolution that swept England and her colonies was an explosion in the amount of waste being generated. As consumers devoured ever-increasing amounts of manufactured goods, the production of waste increased accordingly. We will first turn our attention to the disposal practices in England as a way to understand the colonial mindset. Then we'll look at a couple of examples of colonial trash disposal behavior. All communities produce garbage. How communities deal with their garbage tells us a lot about that community. I should put a Star Wars image in every talk I give. I think so. So now I'm going to make a commitment. So this is Mary Douglas. She's my favorite anthropologist. She studies things that most people don't think about. And this is her quote: "There's no such thing as absolute dirt. It exists in the eye of the beholder." While everyone accepts the notion that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, it is not until relatively recently that trash started to be viewed in this type of lens. Waste should be considered culturally telling, that it conveys messages about past cultures and their values. I love this title. I'm not sure I know what it means, but I was really drawn to it. So before the English migrated to Virginia, they had already developed notions about garbage disposal. So this is a flyer that informed Londoners that a new rubbish carter was on the scene. John Hunt was his name, and he's marketing himself to the people of London using scenes employing pastoral serenity, with clean and happy workers using immaculate new tools to achieve these pristine conditions. That this work was restricted to night suggests that Hunt's ideals were not often achieved. The streets of London were particularly vile. Travelers accepted the streets would be lined with what was called mud, but of course it wasn't really mud. Horse dung, human waste, and garbage greeted pedestrians every day. Archaeologists frequently note that chamber pots often have chipped rims, where owners are banging them on windowsills, fences, and walls. So this Italian traveler who moves to London describes it this way: the streets are badly paved, filled with black mud, black as ink, and with every kind of filth. Okay, so with this sort of in mind, we're going to sort of turn our attention to colonial practices. And so Ferry Farm is the home of the Washingtons from when George is age 6 to about his 22. His mother continues to live there for almost 40 years. And so the house that we're going to look at is built in the 1720s and comes down in the 1830s. Everybody that lives in that house is generating garbage. But we're going to sort of focus in on the Washington era for garbage disposal. Yeah.
You mentioned King George. You may want to mention that it was King George at the time.
Right. I put that on purpose. And so, so when the house is built, King George extends this far, and then by the 16 or sort of later, it becomes Stafford County. So. With these precedents in mind, let us turn our attention to colonial trash disposal habits. It's hard to believe that colonists threw almost all their trash out their back door and windows. Archaeologists call this area trash deposition middens. So let's get our orientation. That's the riverside. This is the back side. The back door is right there. The Colonial Road, which is King's Highway, is down here. So this area right in here is an area that's specifically designed for trash disposal. So as late as the 1880s, health reformers are still trying to dissuade American farmers that creating garbage middens close to their house is a bad idea. The practice starts almost immediately with Jamestown and continues on through into the 20th century. So we're going to deconstruct this drawing a little bit more, just so we can be completely grossed out by it. For those of you who are not there yet, so that's of course an outhouse, and then there's an agricultural building with wheat or hay starting out, and look, it's almost reached the puddle of sort of sludge, and so that's completely horrific. And then let's make matters worse. What can make it worse? Let's add pigs. And of course, they're that little area that they hang out in. And of course, this area doesn't look great either. And so you can't see it, but next to them are the chickens. We'll just say that there are chickens there and leave it at that. And so this farmer's wife has just come out the back door and is tossing she's emptying that pail right onto the ground, right next to her cistern that is collecting water for them to drink. And so, so in the 18th century, they certainly don't understand what germs are, and they haven't figured this out. But by the 1880s, I mean, they should be getting pretty close. This practice continues into the 20th century. So what does a midden look like archaeologically? And so this is a great example. So there's the house, Mount Vernon's mansion house, and then that little guy right there is the midden, and it's a low spot on the terrain in the terrace that it's built on. The house is built on, and somebody walks by one day and says, "Oh, I hate low spots," and they just throw their garbage there, and then they continue to do that for 40 years. And so if you look at what's in here, and so if you cannot see what's in the slide, I'll turn the lights out. And so we've gone through most of the worst, the woodcuts, but just let me know. So that's a bottle, glass, that's the bottom. That's another bottle right there. All kinds of animal bones and ceramics and organic material. And every time somebody goes by with trash, they just dump a little bit in until the low spot is gone. And then archaeologists will come and excavate it, and that's essentially what it looks like behind the Washington House. When we're going to switch our view now, and we're going to just keep in mind the counts that we're talking about. I'll tell you that we're going to look at a bunch of different classes of artifacts, and I'll mention the high count per square, and you go, ooh, okay, that's your job. All right. So this is a plan view of Ferry Farm. So once again, there's the footprint of the house. The river is over here. This is the backyard and the midden yard. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are support buildings that help the plantation operate, where you move ickiness away from the house. And each of these would have had an architectural building on top of it that supports it. And so like that one is a smokehouse, for example. So this is the outline of the dig. So we've done everything within that dotted line, all right? And then just to give a matter of scale, each one of those little squares is 5 feet by 5 feet. So we're talking about a really big area. And so, all right, are you ready? Here we go. All right. So here is bottom glass. And so let's look at the numbers. I can't read that. It's a really big number. What is that number?
106.
106, yeah. So if it takes 10 pieces of glass within that little square, each of those little squares, to make this map. If you have less than 10, you don't get counted. So here we go, lots and lots of stuff. And look, right out the back door, and there's just tons and tons of glass just dumped right out the back door. And then look, what's that over there? I have no idea what that is, but it's really interesting. I don't know why somebody carried all this glass and just dumped it right there. I have no idea why that is, but that's the thing we're going to be trying to figure out in the next couple of years. And so lots and lots of stuff right through there, and it just sort of spreads. Okay. Animal bone. Same thing. What's that number over there?
420.
420. That's a lot of bones for a 5-foot square. All right. So look, that is a massive concentration of bones. Right as you sort of come out and you go in here, and look, there's another one right there, and there's still more over here. I mean, just huge quantities of animal bone in this sort of mid-yard. I forgot to mention that you can stop me at any time, and I'm happy to answer questions.
I've got one, Dave.
Okay.
What did it smell like?
Let's go to the next one. So some people that have, or some animals that have a really good sense of smell thought it smelled great. It smells terrible. There's a lot of organic material too that archaeologically we do not recover. But here you go, 30 rat bones covered. This has been spotted as a prime place to hang out.
Hey Dave, how
Yeah.
far down are you talking when you're talking about?
So it starts to show up. So we have 5 layers out there. We have 20th century, 19th century, and then it starts to show up, and it just runs. So it starts about 5 inches down and runs about 12, 13, 14 inches. So a nice thick layer of lots and lots of stuff.
How did these people that were living there, at some point, the odor should have been so overwhelming that somebody would have figured out that maybe we shouldn't be doing this? I mean, there has to be a reaction to it at some point.
So I think this area is, so there are ways that you can deal with that. So people like what they wear little sachets that smell really good, and so if you go have a bad place, you just put it to your face and go by. And so there's.
I mean, at some point it would make you ill. I mean, it would be some kind of physical reaction.
The descriptions of London, that stuff splashing on you as you go by is just completely horrific. So, and that's why we're here. I'm here to be horrific. All right, so handmade nails. Once again, I can't see what the number is, but lots and lots of them right there, and they spread out that way. So by now you're starting to see a pattern, so let's look at variability. So here's tobacco pipes. And tobacco pipes, they're a little different. There's one, and there's one. Now, this place over here is a great place to hang out. So surveillance goes, let's look at our house. There's a door there. There's no windows on that side. There's a little building right in there. This little guy blocks you too. So if you're trying to avoid being surveilled, this is a great place to go. And look, lots of smoking going on back there. And so the master of the plantation has a direct view of this, but no view over here at all of that. And so this is all tobacco pipes. This is a picture of Pinky Harrington. archaeologists have odd names. I'm working on mine. And his wife, Virginia. And this is 1930s Jamestown. And he's showing off his excavation. He has discovered one of the major things, sort of a major moment in archaeology. He notices that pipe stems, the hole that the smoke passes through, gets smaller as it's more recent. So older pipes, big holes, more recent pipes, smaller holes. And so he wants to measure that, and he doesn't have anything that's really graduated that can measure it. So he comes up with a drill set. And so remember, each drill bit is slightly bigger than the previous one. And so he uses these drill bits to measure how the hole works. And so here's the earliest pipe stems on our site. Our site starts around, this house starts in 1720, and sure enough, look, there they are. They're everywhere on the site. This is still this place you want to avoid being seen. It's still a great place. But it follows over the entire area. This is Audrina Loom. She's the research assistant to Noel Hume and later marries him. And he's the father of Virginia sort of historical archaeology. And he marries her even after, she marries him after this. He gave her all those pipe stems and said, measure them. And she did it. So here's the later ones. And look, now we have a cultural change. Behavior is behaving differently. And so look, here we go, and it's all up north. And down here it becomes less and less. And so at some point, people are going that way. To throw this stuff away or to use these things. I don't really know, but we'll come back to that. So this is Dartmouth. I don't know how they came up with this, but in the 1850s, they decided it the good idea on the day that you graduate to smoke a pipe, a clay pipe, and then bury it on the Dartmouth grounds. And it continued on for quite a while. In 2016, they restarted this tradition for some reason. Yes?
Why do you have such a large concentration inside the house? Or
This
inside
over
the
here?
building? Yeah, there and
Yeah, so there's soils in here after the building goes down. But what maybe happened is, see this big feature right there, that big rectangle? Remember I said all these out here are associated with a building? Well, this is the root cellar for the Washington House. And so maybe we chopped the top of that off a little bit and got all the things out of thousands and thousands of Washington artifacts came out of that. And it could have been we just sort of scraped it a little harder trying to define it and took a little bit of that off and came up with this concentration. Okay, so we were at Dartmouth. I don't understand that behavior. That's like, so, but anyway, I thought it was odd. So, all right. So now you notice the contour lines are gone. When we go to artifacts that don't have a lot, we'll just actually put the numbers on. So look, there they come out this door, and this guy goes right here. This is in 1750s. This becomes incredibly popular, and this is the plate counterpart. And so this is top of the line ceramics coming from Wedgwood, and all those guys are making this. And it's popular for just a moment in time, 1750 to 1760. And look, this all ends up right there. And you look down here, and there is none. And so this is one of our questions: is this use or disposal? And then look, there's another one over there. There's another collection. I'm not supposed to be talking about that because that's not in the midden, but that I think is an activity that's associated with that pit right there. And so I think that's going to be really helpful in understanding what's going on the part of the site that we're not talking about tonight. Anyway, but I can't explain what that is, why that's happening. I can't understand. Let's go outside and we're going to put some of our ceramics over here, but not all of them. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm starting to wonder if that's a use, but I can't think of why that would be used out there. So stay tuned. The next year's talks will be about ugly Wieldonware. Okay, so here's garbage going south. So this is the opposite. This isn't as nicely timed. This has, it's 18th century, but it happens throughout the 18th century, so I can't. With Wieldonware, it's nice and tight. And so now you come out and you go this way to put in lead. I have no idea why you would do that. So maybe there's an activity out here. Maybe we need to look at this lead a little closer and try and figure out, maybe there's an activity out there in the midden yard. Let's go out to the midden yard and work with lead. I don't know. We're gonna figure this out, but it's not gonna be tonight. All right. So we're gonna leave the world of Ferry Farm and we're gonna go 100 miles east to Williamsburg and the governor's palace. And so, so we've just seen somebody who is purposely dumping trash right next to their house. Now we're going to see somebody, what happens when the authorities try and stop you from doing that. Okay, so this is the Frenchman's map. So during the Revolution, somebody said, hey, Frenchman, go and draw the town, and so because we're going to billet troops, and so we need to know where the buildings are that can house troops. And so this is in 1782, and what it is, there's the palace, and there's the outbuildings that go to it, and then this is the vista, so you can look out the palace and not see all this urbanness, you can see nature in its natural state. Yeah. So what happens if you were to jump back 50 years, now some of those buildings would disappear, but look, the ravine that was over here, this is a ravine over here, and this is a little finger ravine, would have actually extended to right there. And that's on the Brush Everard property. So here's what it looks in its heyday, sort of put back together, and you see this great building here. This is the most public space and sort of controlled space sort of in Williamsburg. We want this to look pristine. We're using this to make people know that we are the governor, lieutenant governor actually. So anyway, so it looks great, right? Everything looks great. Well, so then archaeology comes along and digs up. Well, I'm going. Looks like we dig up right in. So that's right about in here. And so you see, you're right next to the governor's palace. You are right on top of it. So here's this ravine. And so we'll start at the bottom. Okay, so that's soil that's formed before humans lived here. And look, it's nice and clean. There's no garbage in it. It's perfect. All right, so look, somebody comes along and dumps this in there. All this brick and mortar and stuff. Somebody takes part of a building or bricks or waste from a building and just dumps it in that ravine. And people go, oh, that's a good idea. Look, then they dump a lot more of this, right? And so now you start to have that horribleness now in the actual clean space of the governor's palace. And so whoever's in charge of keeping that space clean, they like freak out and they say, okay, what can we do? So they get a bunch of clay and they dump it in there on top of it, right? And so there's a clay deposit purposely put, seals that ickiness, that nastiness down, and it takes care of it. Now it's pristine. Everybody's happy again, right? No. Now I assume this is on the down low. I assume you don't go up in the daytime and do this, but they just continue, they just ignore him and say, this is where we dump our trash. This is where we're going to continue to dump our trash. So this is a failure to control sort of where people put things, when they put things where you don't want them to. Okay, so this is the last
What time
one.
frame does that cover?
Huh?
What time frame?
That's the 18th century. Yeah.
So it's a number of years.
It's filled up by 1780. It's filled. Yeah, but it starts early and sort of runs through. All right. So. So we're gonna go 100 miles back now west and end up in Fredericksburg, and then we're going to end up at the house of Betty and Fielding Lewis. And so archaeology, some archaeology has been done there, particularly around the house and the main outbuildings. And so this is a house that's being built in the 1770s, and then two major outbuildings are added right after the house is complete. One is the kitchen and one is the laundry. And we're gonna look at how the kitchen is used. And so I could have labeled this a success story. This is a successful manipulation of the landscape so that you have, it turns out as you want it. So this, so here's a map, a plan view of a house showing, here's just the house with its dimensions, and then you have 30 feet of space, and then another outbuilding, and then 45 feet of space, then another outbuilding, same thing going on the other side. So just a line of buildings, and we're going to turn our attention to the kitchen. So here's the earliest picture of that kitchen. You can see it's made out of wood instead of brick. You know, the thinking here is that the war is coming, and maybe we need to preserve our resources, or maybe we've used up a lot of our resources, and so let's use a slightly cheaper material, and we'll build this out of wood. It has this odd fence that goes through it. This is the 19th century. I don't really know what that fence is trying to do yet. I've only been sort of focusing on the 18th century, and so we're just going to pretend that's not there. All right, so this area is this is the kitchen, this is the house. Enslaved workers make food in here, and they travel across here, bring food in here, and they take garbage and go back over here, and they should put it in here, right? Yeah, makes perfect sense. And so we look, there's the door that you can go out, come across here and go into the house door. There's a door specifically designed for people to bring food in on that side and then go back in. So back and forth. All right, trash city, right? Nope. So look, there's nothing there. There's some modern things. Right, this is all modern. But look, there's no holes in here. Somebody has purposely kept this clean. And there's no artifacts in this area. This is, so now there is surveillance, right? We talked about surveillance, that you can look out that door and sort of see what's going on here. But whoever said, don't throw your trash in this space, people are listening. This is a fence line that's in there to demarcate one edge of that. It's a fence line. This suggests that the fence line is replaced over time. So when the first set rots, they put another one in, and there may actually be a third one in there. It's hard for me to tell without looking at the artifacts. But that's on one edge of it. Let me go back. That's those guys right there. And see, it's right on the end, so on the river side. So, all right. So now so we leave this area and we go to Washington Avenue side. This is the opposite of the river side. And so they put their kitchen trash over here. There's no door over here. There is a window, but there's no door. So you'll have to come out, walk through this clean space, and go right there. So lots and lots of control. And so we saw how clean the other side was. This side is just junky. Somebody has dumped some sort of architectural material in here. I don't know whether it's a building that's being built or being disposed of. I suspect it wasn't working very well, so they just took it down. And then lots and lots of animal bones, just amazing amounts of animal bone. That's a pig jaw if you want. I don't know what that little thing is. That's some sort of piece of lead. Maybe we need to plot the distribution of lead. I know you're wanting a plot of the distribution of lead. That's the next year's talk, distribution of lead. And then there's a knife with a bone handle. really nice stuff, and just lots and lots and lots of great stuff just up to now. So then you come around to the next side, and this side is really different too. There's not very much trash in here. But what there is the remains of a garden. And so, okay. So this is a different view. We've been looking at plan views. We've been looking for the top down. This is the opposite view. This is from the side looking into the stratigraphy. And so the most modern stuff is up here and the oldest stuff at the bottom. All right, so we got subsoil, the soil that was formed before humans get here, right? And so that's nice and pristine. And then above it, there are plowed soils. Before the house is built in the 1770s, this is a farmer's field. And it has plow scars, all that are just narrow and straight, perfectly straight. They all go in the same direction. They all behave. This is organized farming at its best. Just run forever. And we did phytolith study, and we got corn out of this. So just picture a field of corn with just straight sort of rows, nice plow scars, and it's going. So then this guy, Kenmore has a basement, and so they plowed through an amazing amount of clay, and they didn't know what to do with it. So they said, I have an idea, let's spread it around the house. And so they spread it all the way around the house on all four sides. And it's pretty thick through here. And was that a question? Yeah. Okay. So, and then up on top of that, after the house is built, so this is the event of the house being built. Everything before that is before the house. Everything after that is after. And look, there's a kitchen garden right on top. And you say, well, how do you know what a kitchen garden looks like? Well, this is how you know what a kitchen garden looks like. It has all kinds of wacky plow scars in it. Somebody is taking this little area. Remember what I said? It was like 40 feet by the house. So it's 40 by, and they're running plows through it, and they run them in all different directions. They're just going in any different direction they want to. So so you can see not a lot of artifacts in this. There's some artifacts, but so that's the third. And then we're going to go to the last side, and there is a really super controlled space, and that's the formal garden. And so with it you have terracing going on in here, and then this is there's a Colonial Revival garden out there now, but underneath it the archaeological garden is still intact. They just built this on top of the 18th century garden, and it lives a very peaceful, quiet, happy life as an archaeology site underneath this garden. And so you see that garden extends over to the kitchen, and that side of the kitchen is actually in the formal garden. And so what you get is you get the world that looks like this. Each side of this kitchen is controlled for a different use, and that control works really well. So, and there's a place where you can throw your garbage, but it's not where it logically should be. If this was the governor's palace, this would be where it was, because people aren't paying attention. But they're paying attention to him, because he's telling them, he's like, you need to put garbage over there. And so he does. So I don't want to, I'm a judger, okay? I judge people. When my kids say, don't judge me, I go, I can't help it. I'm a judger. But when it comes with this, I think that there are many studies that talk about cultural survivals through time. Sort of things that start in particular parts of England, and they jump across the Atlantic, and then they migrate west as sort of the westward expansion goes, and those traditions sort of follow them. And so I think some of those have survived into the 20th century. And so if your neighbor, or you, I'm not judging, oh, I'm judging, happens to be one of these people, there's 400 years of history on their side. And you should say, Oh, get that stuff out of there. All right, any questions?
The midden at Kenmore seemed really small for such a huge plantation. Is there another trash bin?
So it's the midden just from the kitchen stuff. Yeah, it's not the house midden. I don't know where the house midden is. It hasn't been found, but it should be out there somewhere. But once again, we saw that Fielding Lewis did not allow things to happen on his plantation. So he may have a spot where it is, and we just haven't run into it yet. It's not around the house. So I don't know where it is. We'll just have to run into it archaeologically.
Was there any dumping into the Rappahannock by these people?
So let's go to Ferry Farm because that's the closest. And so what happens is there are people that live there in a different house before the Washingtons. So when this is the frontier, and around the turn of the 18th century, there's a little wooden house situated right on that bluff, and they have no neighbors, and they just throw everything right over the side. They do not care. By the time you move up to the 1720s and 30s, that's the view side. That's the town of Fredericksburg is now in existence, and that is the view shed of them. And what happens is when you go down the river to just below the Washington House, and you put your same shovel test in that you put besides this earlier house that's upriver, there are no artifacts there. So that somebody is successfully controlling garbage disposal on that. They don't want the pristine side, the presentation side of the plantation house to have garbage strewn up and down it. So they don't allow it. So, and then afterwards, there's another ravine, and they don't throw down that hill. They actually go over to the ravine on the side and start to fill that ravine up. And that occurs in the 19th century and in the 20th century. So that ravine that leads into, that becomes the place where that farmer dumps all his garbage.
Do you have any idea of what they did at Chatham?
No. I think Chatham would be an excellent, because I love to think about Chatham and Kenmore at the same time. They're both constructed at the same time. They're both two really powerful guys in town sort of trying to announce their presence and doing it in a really different way. And so that comparison of Kenmore and Chatham to me is like perfect. That's a perfect way to examine different approaches to the same issues by two different people that are competing with each other. Now Chatham is certainly dominant over Fielding Lewis. Chatham is, but they're pretty, Fielding Lewis might be the next person down compared, and so Chatham builds this massive complex. It's all exterior, and Kenmore is all interior. All the energy goes into the interior, and so those two houses are speaking to each other. There's two different ways to skin that cat. And so then maybe their trash is would reflect those two different ways at the same time. But we won't know that for a long time. So.
Another thing is we've heard that the Germans didn't do things the way the British did. Can you talk about what the Germans did with their trash?
I could, but I'd be making it up. So, you saw the Dutch. The Dutch are, do you consider the Dutch close to Germans? No? I don't know. So I'm going to say I don't know.
Do you have any thoughts on trash disposal in Fredericksburg? Is it kind of a London situation, or is it maybe a little different?
So I don't really know much about Fredericksburg. I only worked on one site in Fredericksburg. I worked on a lot of sites in Williamsburg, and so I would have let's take Williamsburg and we can extrapolate it to Fredericksburg. And because no one's ever going to dig Fredericksburg, we'll never be called on this. So Fredericks, I mean, Williamsburg is a weird sort of place. It's laid out ignoring topography. It's man imposing his will on nature. And so the guy who lays it out in about 1700, lays out these straight lines right through all those ravines. And so for the first 20, 25 years, you can't, on the winter, you can't get from one end of Duke of Gloucester to the other because there's so much mud in the low spots of those, you know. And so they go to work on that almost immediately. And they work on it in two ways. One is they build drainage systems everywhere. Anytime there's a low spot, they build a brick drains. And then the other thing they do is they just dump garbage in those low spots and try and sort of level it out. And when you go down Duke of Gloucester Street today, it's a little wavy, but it's nothing like what it used to look like. And so every time you go into one of those ravines, they are just chock full of garbage. So the coffee house was one of the sites that we worked on. And I knew from the minute I became an excavator that that was going to be the place. When people say, where in Williamsburg do you want to dig? I would always say, that coffee house. And I knew that that was just going to be fabulous stuff. And when they rebuilt the coffee house, it was just incredibly fabulous stuff. So anytime you see a low spot in Williamsburg, you should think that there's like feet and feet of interesting stuff. Okay, well, you've done very well. You've come through 3 lectures, and so I think the plan is we have these annually, or at least we have for the last couple of years, and so you should, and we have a great partner in the library, and so we are thankful to all their help, and we will be knocking on their door next year and asking them if they'd like to do this again. So, thank you very much for coming.